I'd like to call to order the work session on September 13, 2021. We are all here this evening, and we have one item on the agenda, and our city manager, Julie Cairns, will introduce it. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. One of my 2021 goals was to evaluate the potential benefits of accreditation for our public safety departments and to present findings to Council in time for the fiscal year 23 budget process. So tonight I'm here with our Fire Chief Paul Louisi and Police Chief Jimmy Rodriguez to discuss our recommendations. So accreditation is a formal independent verification by subject matter experts that an organization meets quality standards and is competent to carry out the mission of the department. It involves a comprehensive self-assessment and evaluation of past, current, and future service levels. Pursuing accreditation promotes excellence, encourages quality improvement, and enhances transparency. And although already high, obtaining accreditation will ensure the highest level of public trust for our public safety functions. But as you might expect, seeking and maintaining accreditation is time-sensitive and will have budget impacts with additional administrative support dedicated to the task. And so now I'd like to turn it over to Chief Louisi, who will discuss the timeline for fire department accreditation, followed by then Chief Rodriguez, who will provide similar information for police accreditation. And then I look forward to the conversation.
All right, before the chief starts, it's only one item. Remind you about pausing intermittently and to answer or ask questions. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Paul Louisi, Fire Chief. So the accreditation process for the fire department is actually done by their Center for Public Safety Excellence. It's a nonprofit international agency really looking at dedicating and improving fire and emergency services. And they do this through credentialing in the accreditation process. So there are several steps to the process. One is to become a registered agency, which we actually already are at this point. Then the next step is to become the applicant agency. And so during that process, you have 18 months to complete that. You can ask for extensions if you need it, and they'll extend for another year if possible. And then you become an accredited candidate. And this is when you have peers that will come out and do a site visit. And they'll go through everything, all the components of your application to ensure that everything is up to date and ready. And then you'll be referred on to the board. And then the board will review that. They usually do a review twice every year. And so then you would go in front of the board and defend your application at that point. And then once you do become accredited, the renewal period is every 5 years, but you do need to submit annual updates. So the categories that they look at for the accreditation model, they look at governance and administration, they look at assessment and planning, goals and objectives, financial resources, programs that you have, the trainings and competencies, essential resources. So a lot of different areas that they'll look at for your department. And then each category contains a number of critical criterion, up to a total of 244 performance indicators. And then from that, they actually have 77 of those 244, which they have designated as core competencies. And then the 4 big areas that they look at during the process is the risk assessment, which includes all fire and non-fire risks. So that's within your community, not just in the department, but within the community. Goals and objectives, all functional areas of the organization. They'll look at all of their goals and objectives. The level of service is done through the standard of cover. So that's how we provide services to our public. And then what the strategic plan is. So for a 5-year strategic plan, which is really the blueprint for how we move the organization forward. So some agencies in the Valley actually in Arizona that are accredited, Chandler, Gilbert, Kingman, Mesa, Peoria, Surprise. Tempe was actually one of the first accredited agencies. They actually went in when the process first started as a pilot agency. And they continue to maintain their accreditation today. And Tucson and Yuma round out that list. Some key considerations for us, this comes with quite a bit of work. So we would recommend, if we are going to move forward, that we consider hiring an accreditation manager, would be a policy and an accreditation manager. So they would help coordinate all the team members on the accreditation team. Like I said, it's a never-ending process. It's an annual ongoing update that we have to do for the accreditation process. There's evaluation, there's assessment, there's measurements that go into that. There's certainly the agency focus, and then like I said, the annual compliance reporting. So some of the costs that are associated with it, as I stated earlier, we are already an accredited agency. So we have 2 years within that timeline or that category, but we can always renew it. So this is $585, so not a massive cost for us. The next step becomes more pricier. So as you become an applicant agency, that, again, 18 months do you have in that time frame. And it's about $7,500 to get that portion completed, that next step. And then you can extend that up to upwards of another 12 months. And then once you become a candidate agency, this is where the defense happens for your application. So it's occurs 40 to 50 days after they do the site visit, and about $8,500, and then also additional monies for us to be able to travel to defend our application. So depending on where the board meeting is at that point in time, we would have to travel to that location. And then once you do become accredited, there's a $1,500 annual cost. So over the 5 years of your accreditation would be about $7,500. So at this point, our recommendation for the fire department would be to seek accreditation. And now I'm going to turn it over to Chief Rodriguez.
Thank you, Chief Louisi. Mayor and Council, Jimmy Rodriguez, Chief of Police. And I'll go into our options as accreditation for the police department. So there are 2 options for police department accreditation, which are the commission accreditation for law enforcement agencies, which is also known as CALEA, as a national accreditation program across the United States. And the second option would be Arizona Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, which is supported by the Arizona Association Chiefs of Police, which is more of a state accreditation. And we'll go into the following slides. We'll break it down a little bit more on what that means. So the standards to be met, there's 2 different amounts of standards. For CALEA, there's 38 sections with 207 standards, and ALEAP, which is the Arizona Law Enforcement Accreditation Program, is 29 sections with 165 standards. We break it down with cities in Arizona. Currently, there are 11 cities in Arizona with a CALEA accreditation, and in Maricopa County, the following agencies have the CALEA accreditation, as you can see there on the left-hand corner: ASU, Buckeye, Chandler, Glendale, Peoria, Scottsdale, and Surprise. When it comes to ALEAP, there are 35 cities that are enrolled, and in Maricopa County, the following agencies are enrolled in the process, other than Salt River, which has finally reached their accreditation. And as you can see there, Scottsdale is trying to get both accreditations at this point in time. And that'll maybe become a discussion later on in the timelines. So going over the timelines, the CALEA accreditation will take 3 years to complete. This includes a self-assessment, a CALEA assessment, and then review by the CALEA Commission. The ALEAP accreditation takes about 2 years, or will take at least 2 years to complete. And this includes a self-analysis, a mock assessment, and an on-site assessment. Breaking it down by timelines, this is the CALEA accreditation timeline. As you can see there, enrollment would start September of 2020. For example, the self-assessment phase, the 36 months begins in October of 2022. There's the formal assessment in October of 2025. And then it would go to the CALEA Commission Review Board for a decision to be made in January of 2026, or would be awarded in 2026. Breaking it down for ALEAP accreditation timeline, beginning with the same dates. There's the initial enrollment, the self-assessment phase, which is 24 months, begins in October of 2022. The formal assessment in October 23. And then ALEAP commissioners will do a review, and there'll be a board decision that's made in November 2023. And then ultimately, the Arizona Association of Chiefs of Police Executive Board will do the final review and make the decision in January 2024. Breaking down the costs, you'll see here that ALEAP with 101 or more sworn employees is a one-time payment of $1,000 and then an annual reoccurrence of $500. CALEA breaks it down into two different sections here. And CALEA also encompasses all employees, not just the sworn, but encompasses all the police department employees. So up to 199 employees is $11,000 one-time payment and then a $4,000 annual reoccurrence. And just as a side note there, FY22, obviously the police department would be at about 181. So eventually, as time goes on, we would be over that 200 mark. And just like Chief Luisi was stating, in his part of the presentation, we would also need to hire a policy and accreditations manager to be able to implement this, to maintain it, and move forward in the years to come to either make changes or to do the assessments. Also, though, we do feel that we'll need some extra lift from our legal department and their staff because it would require additional legal review for policies and procedures and things to that nature when it comes to these accreditation policies. And with that, our recommendation is to pursue CALEA accreditation. Obviously, it sets a set of standards or the gold standard for our department, our city, and our community out in the community that we serve. But it also includes all employees and not only the sworn employees as mentioned before. And it's more inclusive to a set of standards that's out there. We'd also like to eventually obtain ALEAP, as you saw Scottsdale in the previous slide eventually, to be able to have the state accreditation also that is seen. However, pursuing the two accreditations at the same time would not be feasible because there are different standards and it is a lot of work for that accreditation manager to handle all at one time. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that you might have that we could answer for you.
Thank you, police and fire, for this. So I'm going to turn it over to council now. How do you want to do this? Because there's, the police and the fire. Do we want to just do the fire first, then go to the police, or do we want to mix it up? Somebody give me some kind of, maybe?
On one first?
All right, then we're going to start with the fire. You have any question?
Yeah.
Joe?
What's the benefit of getting the certificate?
Councilman Pizzolo, I think one of the benefits for us is you get a non-biased view of the fire department. As we all remember, in 2013, we had an audit done on the fire department. So, I think for us, this keeps, it ensures for the public that we are doing what we say we do. So that there's that non-biased view by others from across the country that would come in, evaluate our department, and show that we do stand on our own merits and say what we actually do.
There's a update annually.
Yes.
That $108,600, would that have to be spent each year?
That was the policy and accreditation manager's salary. So that's a fully benefited salary. But yeah, it would be another FTE, so it would be a full-time FTE.
So that cost would be reoccurring.
That would be a
every year,
recurring
Year
cost.
after year.
Yes.
Are there any benefits for insurance on homeowners as a result of getting this?
No, we're actually currently undergoing an ISO review, which is the Insurance Services Organization. So that's the one that actually impacts the commercial and residential insurance.
Right.
So we're hoping to have that to be able to report back to you probably by the end of this calendar year. Hopefully it will be sooner, but they started their process in July, so hopefully that will be done rather soon. So that's the one that will actually impact the insurance rates.
So the review itself, I don't want to assume anything, but they would make recommendations if there's an area of policy that needs improvement or changing?
For the accreditation,
Right.
yes. Yes, they do provide feedback on areas that you need to work on, coverages that you need to ensure are there, and also how to identify or actually work with different risks that are in your city, in your community.
Okay, thank you.
Brandon?
My question's for both, but I'll start with you. So same thing, is this your only certification? We have more, is this the only one we would have?
Yeah, this is the only one that is really seen as the gold standard for the fire and emergency services. So, and again, it is international. So there, are others across the world that have achieved this accreditation level. So,
Okay, how long has that accreditation been around? Is it?
That's a good question. I know it's been around several years. They actually will even accredit individuals as well. And so, like for me, I hold my designation as a chief fire officer. So I go through the same accreditation process as an individual, but I get peer reviewed, and then I have to go in front of a board, and then every 3 years I have to get recertified. So it's a pretty intensive process. I would say it's been around for at least 20 years, if not more.
Okay, yeah, no, I like that we're trying to, push the bar, have, like I said, the gold standard of the industry, and have industry peers review what we're doing, our workings, give us feedback and lessons learned, and
Yep.
and just make us better. It's always good to have feedback's a gift, so it's always good to have other outside agencies looking at us, just in case we think we're doing well, but there could be new things happening, or just new ways to do things, or we get off track slightly and they bring us back into alignment. Is there, in their accreditation, can you fail, I guess, what is it, is there
Yeah.
probation, and then, or is there ratings? Will we see a report on how you guys did and things like that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a process that we can share with you, but certainly when the peer review phase happens, when they come out and do the site visit for up to a week, if we're not ready, if we're missing some really critical components, especially our core competencies, they could say, you're not ready yet. You need to do more work. And one of the benefits we feel that we have right now is Deputy Fire Chief Tim Wayne is actually a peer reviewer.
Oh.
So he's going out to other departments. So he can certainly learn from others' mistakes and kind of help us with our application. But yeah, and I've actually done peer reviews for individuals. And if people aren't ready to move forward, they won't let you move forward. So it's not a handout. They are looking to ensure that you are doing what you say you do.
Yeah, and I see the cost here, but I'm used to my old industry. If you're a peer, do they pay for you to come and review them? And
Yeah.
like the industry,
Yeah, so
everybody just takes care of we all help each other out type of thing, where you pay for me and then I'll pay for you next time when you help me out type, or someone in the industry would come, we'd fly them out to help peer review.
Chief Wayne could not do a peer review in his own department, so we would have to bring a whole team in to do the review for us. But when he travels, it's compensated by the
By
cost
that agency.
for the,
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm used to with my last industry, so, okay. And the same questions are really for you, but I can come back, when it's the police turn, I guess we can go back to you.
Yes, can you
Thank
hold
you.
that on that
Yep.
one? Sherry?
I like the idea of the gold standard, like everyone has said. I do have a question. So when they're looking at your competencies, do you have access to best practices or different best practices?
Yeah, they will actually share that during the process, and so they'll talk to you about the different components and maybe even an area that you're lacking and what different agencies you can reach out to kind of help shore that up and steps that they may have taken. So there are industry best practices that are shared with the department as well, so.
And would that include, because I know one of the issues we continue to have is with our growth, the best practices for coverage, would that be something that would be
Yeah.
part of this?
Yeah, and it's certainly an area that they'll spend a lot of time looking at, is that coverage standard to ensure that as we grow, we do have the appropriate amount of coverage.
And then my last question, you said the risk assessment. We've got a lot of like up at Estrella, I know you guys were doing the FireWise program
Yeah.
and those things. Is that something that's going to be like a ding to us because we have a lot of desert land, or?
I don't think it would be a ding per se, but it would be an area that we would need to focus on, or at least in the peer review section, an area that we could improve upon. And so a lot of times, in those, especially in an area like us where we're growing, they'll give us a time frame to help improve that area that, we may be either behind a little bit on, or maybe not up to speed as they would want us to be. So there's definitely areas for us to improve upon, and hopefully over those, 5 years, you're able to improve upon it and be able to go back to the board and show during your next phase of accreditation that you have improved upon those areas.
One more question. I think it's a really, really good program. When we bring on the ambulance service, would that be part of this accreditation, or is that a separate one? How does that work?
So the ambulance service does have a separate accreditation process, and but I think they do at least look at that as part of your standards of cover, because obviously across the world there are fire departments that obviously provide ambulance service, so it would be an all-inclusive department review.
Well, thank you very much for bringing this forward, because I think it's a really good idea to see those best practices and how they work, and how we can improve as we grow and make sure that we stay up so we're not playing catch up. So I think this would be a great way to see that and get those outside. Not that you don't do a great job, but I think it's great to get that outside input as well.
It
Thank you.
absolutely is, yeah.
Laura?
Well, Goodyear is solidly a mid-sized city, and we're approaching 100,000. And so I think this type of accreditation gives us a good, strong foundation as we build a future, as we can just continue to grow and grow. And certainly in government, professional accreditation is very common. Like you said, you have personal accreditation, and I know Julie does, and Lyman does, and I'm sure Doug does, lots, everybody. I'm looking in the audience, there's a lot of accredited people, because I think it is important to have that best practices. I do like the idea of the independent review and working to just continuous improvement is always important. I'm curious about the level of these additional positions, this accreditation manager. Is it a managerial position? It is administrative? Is it a management assistant? Just kind of what kind of position is it?
I would say it's more probably a management assistant, maybe a step up from that, not necessarily a manager position. But, they would have quite a bit of work to do to kind of help manage through all of the data sets. But definitely a kind of a management assistant level.
Okay, thank you.
Wally?
Well, I'm happy to see you come, because we've talked about this before, but we weren't ready.
Yes.
I think at one time, council asked if you were ready, and you
Yes.
said, not yet, but when
Yep.
you are, you'd come to us. So I'm excited about that. I think it's always good to have an outside check. While we think we're the best there is, we can even get better.
Mhm.
And I feel the same way with police department. I like having an outside agency come in and tell us how good we're doing, and if we need to do anything differently. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Sure.
Bill? I do. Okay, so I'm just a normal person living in this city, and I've never worked for the government before. So you appear to do this. So I'm just curious, does it take away time from our public safety individually or as a group? Is it, we have to hire the manager. Does it take time away from the job? is there any penalty to when you don't accomplish a section of it? You know, and you have to repeat that? And lastly, is how do you inform the public? Now, you're going to have people maybe that are in businesses that really adhere to that but I'm one that's just coming to you as a military wife, and I hadn't heard anything like this and gone through anything like this. So there's the side that I'm more interested in is if we decide to do this, how we present this to the public and the value of it. Value time away from job and value for money, the cost of it.
Yeah.
So that was my question. Okay.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think with the accreditation, policy and accreditation manager, it certainly would place a lot of the burden on that job, and that would be the sole focus of that job.
Okay.
If we were to not get that position, at least speaking for the fire department, it would be really difficult for us to find time in somebody else's schedule to get this accomplished. So I think that would certainly be a challenge for us to get that piece done. This does become a very transparent process once we are accredited, and so we can post a lot of that stuff on our website to be able to share with the public. Our application would be open for review from the public and to visualize it. And then our performance metrics that we establish through this process would be very visible to the public as well. So it's a constant and evolving process for us, for sure. And it does allow for the public to kind of view as you go through that process.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
Okay.
Any other questions for fire? All right, Chief, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just go ahead and start with some of the questions that were already given and then go from there. I have a couple things to add to in reference to what you were just talking about at the end. So our enrollment process or the accreditation process does have self-assessments throughout the process, and then ultimately where they come out and do a formal assessment. If you don't pass those assessments, you don't move forward. You obviously got to go back and fix some of those things. And depending on the timeline also, I mean, you could technically get fined, or not fined, I should say, but there might be an extension that you need to pay for to move forward, is what I know of CALEA. So a couple of the other things that came up was, are there any other types of accreditations that could do the same thing at the police department? And these are the only two that are known. The national one, which is CALEA, which is the gold standard in accreditation out there when it comes to law enforcement. And then obviously the state one that we talked about, which is ALEAP, that is supported by the Arizona Association of Chiefs of Police. However, CALEA has been around a lot longer than ALEAP. ALEAP's probably been around 3 to 4 years, maybe. Something new that the Arizona Chiefs of Police came up with in conjunction with just meeting and finding out how do we accredit ourselves statewide with those same best practices, best standards out there. And then also in moving on, Mayor, you had asked about, does it take away from the public? And just to add, and I know Chief Louisi talked most about it, that accreditation manager is very important, because not only are they going to be managing the project and taking care of a lot of the policies and procedures, at least on the police side that do that, they're also going out and doing the audits and inspections to make sure we're going to pass those reviews or those milestones as we come up to those reviews to make sure that we're going to get through it. However, it takes somebody that knows the CALEA process. It takes somebody that already probably coming in from the outside that has that knowledge to get us through that has already been successful at other departments to get us through that. The other thing is I feel that it's a great way to market not only our police department, but our public safety when it comes to nationally, but also as a city, that your public safety has gone through a set of reviews. They work together hand in hand, and that it shows. I mean, not only from the people that might be moving here that are looking to see if we have a professionally accredited public safety, but also the people that would like to come to work for us. And they might be coming from already an agency that's accredited that would like to transfer over. So they know the ins and outs and they know that. So it is a way of branding ourselves. And like anything else, we would put it out to the public, being transparent through social media or through our Citizens Academy, things like that, where we would have a section, we speak about what it takes to get accredited and so forth. So I feel that it's a great thing at this point in time. That's the notes that I had here, but if there are any questions, I would
I'm
love
just
to take them.
still working through this for me. So how does the information then go to the individual fire, individual police? How does that continue on and the information is feeded to them? So best practice is something to actually do or work with or understand. So can you take me from that point?
At least for the police department, it's through things that are happening through annual conferences that CALEA would be putting on, through different bulletins that would come out and so forth. So if the standard changed across the nation in some form, we would get that information and then they would adopt it and you would have to comply with them. So you would have to go make those changes and then comply with them or show how the policy has complied with those new gold standards or those best practices across the nation.
So you're kind of the director over this, your department. So what if somebody all of a sudden did bad practice and just, you know, even though they've learned a certain way, but they go a different direction? Does that affect it in that individual in any way?
So let me understand it, see if I understand you correctly. If an employee did a bad practice,
It's not very manager-like, but it's the things that I think about when I don't know anything.
well, if that employee now would do a bad practice or something, they're held accountable and it would get looked into.
Okay.
However, what we do know is we'll know what the best standards are and what the best practices out there, and those values would be set.
Okay, great explanation. Molly?
Well, I'm glad to see you doing it too, Chief. I remember having this conversation before I ever got on council when our police department was not credited. Sorry, fire, but I was going after police first.
That's fine.
I think it's important for us to possibly take this step forward, if nothing else, to keep the credibility of this department intact, because we have gone through some rough waters in the last couple of years. And I think by doing the accreditation, we will be showing our residents that we are doing our job the best way. And I think it's important. I mean, everyone assumes that what we do is right, but we need the outside to come in and look at us, because I think things get away from us, bad habits possibly. And I remember talking about accreditation when Jeff Rogers was on, remember? And he had to go through all the manuals, and they said, well, until that's done, we can't even talk about accreditation. And that's what, been 12 years, 15 years maybe? So anyway, thank you very much. I think it would be good for our department to do this, and it would bring everybody up to what the standards are or should be and will be, because you'll know.
Yeah, and if I could add, I was here obviously when we were going through that. However, trying to take somebody internally that already has a full-time job, if not more than a full-time job, is you're setting up somebody for failure. In talking to all the chiefs that I have talked to that have been accredited or CALEA accredited, one of the main things they told me is you got to have somebody come in that knows the accreditation process, that's already experienced it, and that is the key, to make this successful.
I'm sorry I didn't speak to that, but absolutely, both of you, if you're going to do the accreditation, you have to have the policy management piece, because your employees are doing their jobs everywhere else, and they can't do this as a side job and be successful.
Right.
So thank you.
Sherry?
I agree with Wally. I think this is very important, especially for the police department right now with all the issues in the last year or so, not just with us, but nationwide. There's a spotlight on police. So I think that's very important to show transparency and to be willing to make those changes for best practices. And I know you are, and I know that's why you're asking for this, is so we can do that. And I think that's really good for our citizens. And I assume that if you're doing best practices and we follow them, that's also helps if there's citizen complaints or problems that we say we followed these best practices, I would assume.
Yes, those will be integrated in policies and procedures, standard operating procedures. And when things happen, they can go back and show that that was the best practice, not only here, but throughout all the CALEA, a community out there. And that's how business is done as a police department.
Yeah, that we're not an outlier or anything, that we're following the standards.
Right.
So, and I do agree, I think having that manager position, that program manager position for both of them is very important, because it is a fresh set of eyes from the outside on the accreditation. And a lot of times people, if you're trying to do something like that from inside, you might like, well, we've always done that, and that's the policy, and that's not a bad thing, but it's sometimes good to have that fresh set of eyes to say, this is what they're looking for, and this is why, we need to maybe go a little bit this way instead, rather than what we've been doing. So I think that's good to have that independent person who isn't already working here to kind of get an overview. So I think that's great. So thank you.
I agree with Wally and agree with you, but I didn't realize that we would have the person in charge of this. And so it's their responsibility to make sure the work is done. It takes a lot off my shoulders thinking about what is the hours going to take you into this, which are going to be precious hours to take care of our city. Yeah, Laura?
You recently started the Community Action Network in response to George Floyd and all the fallout from all of that. And in one of the sessions, we went over the training standards for Goodyear and demonstrated to the community how much we exceed the minimum standards. And it's expensive to do that. It takes a lot of time to do that. But the response from the members of the network was so positive, and really understanding the value of investing in the training and things. And so taking that premise and expanding it through your entire department, I think will only be very helpful in a very volatile world. I don't see things necessarily calming down anytime soon. I think we will probably take our rotation in the media spotlight, just as things happen. So I think it's a good investment. I find it interesting, Avondale and Buckeye have already become accredited in police, and I think that's good. Now, you said it covers all employees and not just sworn, so are they going to review all of your internal, can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so they'll look at all the internal policies, practices, not only from our sworn, but to include different areas. They have, CALEA actually has certifications for your telecommunications division on its own, but also in the detention realm, things like that. So there's quite a bit there that they'll look at. And you couldn't have said it better. You summed it up in a very, very good way. Not only are we investing in our community, we're investing in our people too, in our officers, like we do the extra training. So it's actually, investing in on both sides. It's a win-win.
Good. And you made a comment that you may need extra lift from legal staff. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's mostly probably because there'll be new policies and procedures that come out. And currently, when we put in a new process or we change a process, we try to use our legal advisor to take a look at it just to make sure that that is out there, that it makes sense, and that is the golden rule or the standard out there, the best practice already as it is. So that would be my only thing, is that if there's new policies that come out or we're looking to change something, that we're also consulting with our legal department to make sure that they understand and that we understand, what it's going to take to make those changes.
Okay, thank you. I'm supportive of both certifications.
Any other comments from council? Bill? None? Okay. Anything you want?
Mayor, I have one, I'm sorry.
Well, you go right.
I
No,
just-
don't be sorry.
If it's a consensus that we move ahead, I do not want this one FTE taken away from a fireman or adding a policeman. I don't want to take that away from either one of you if we're giving you this. That's just my personal opinion.
Any other comments?
I'm not understanding that, because that would then be the consensus of the entire council. What are you
Can you,
driving at,
Bill, can
Wally?
you talk a
No,
little
I'm
bit
just,
louder?
I'm saying that that's my personal opinion, and I don't know how the council feels. But if chief comes to us, either chief, and says, I need one more staff person, I don't want the city or us to say, well, we're sorry, we gave you one and we gave you the accreditation person, so that's gonna be the spot. That's your extra. And we preclude them from adding additional staff if they need it. And I'm not saying we do that sort of thing, but I've worked for the state before.
That's a
I've
good
seen
point.
how
That is
sometimes
a good
budget
point.
hurts.
You don't want to
So,
swap out, you just
I
want
do not want to
additional.
swap out that
gotcha.
position for a sworn for either one of them. Thank you, it's a swapper.
No, I think that you're absolutely
And-
right.
and these
because
are-
we've done that before on different issues, and I think.
We
that-
have.
Yeah.
These aren't sworn persons.
Right, these are civilian positions, yes.
Right, well, I don't want it to take another, if he needs another one in the front desk, I don't want him not to be able to get one, as chief needs someone to do whatever, a file clerk or whatever. I just don't want to shorten them because we're giving them this new, because this is a new position.
Right, but it competes. I think making that statement from us as a council takes away what the manager does at budget time.
Well, it may, but she needs to know that we don't want to do that, though. And then it's up to her. If she does it, but, I
I
mean, I'm
mean,
not telling her what to
she's the
do.
manager. and
We've
she
done this
manages,
before,
but-
though, Bill.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
We've done this before.
We've never said you can't do something with a position before. We've said we
I'll
like
talk
the
to you
idea of
after,
moving.
I'll refresh
You
your
might be a
memory
little
after the meeting.
discouraging about it. You might make a comment, because council does. I mean, many times
Right.
you make.
But we're
you
approving a new
give her
program.
indication, but just like I tell the new class coming in, hirees, that the city manager runs the city.
She
And,
absolutely runs
and
the
we
city.
have wonderful council people, and once in a while, they'll go to a staff and say something about it. And I said, so I want you to know, as staff, you go to your city manager. You don't have to be talking to our council about this.
That's right.
So, yeah. Go ahead, Brandon.
I just want to verify. So it's one each new FTE, and they're 5-year. Do you think, is there, I guess, I don't know. I'm sure you already know this, but is there enough work for that full-time person for just the accreditation portion of it?
Yes, I believe so. For the fire department, there's plenty of work.
And I'll continue on that accreditation person. They'll do self-assessments. They'll
Yeah.
go through, keep the accreditation.
Policy updates. I
Okay.
mean, there's, yeah.
There is on the PD side also, once they're done finishing the accreditation,
The
it
next
starts
cycle starts
right
up
over again, getting ready for the, review that's gonna come up again in the future, so they're already
Okay.
working on things.
Okay, just curious. So, thank you.
All right, Joe?
Just to piggyback on Councilmember Stipp's, my understanding, correct me if I'm incorrect, to add an FTE would be a council action to the budget or whatever. Manager has the authority, if there's vacant positions that's not being utilized, to rechange that, reclassify that position. Is that correct?
Thank you, Mayor, if I may. So the purpose of this work session was to see if there was council consensus to move forward with considering this for next year's budget process. So if the consensus was to seek accreditation and knowing that it's your chief's opinion that they would need to add these FTEs to successfully achieve that accreditation, as we're putting together next fiscal year's budget is when we would look to include those positions in the process. Now, I think to the point of if we start putting together next year's budget and say in the off chance there's not any dollars available to add a single position, that would certainly then have to be a conversation we'd have at that time, which was council expressed an interest. We don't have the ability to add positions. How else can we get creative? But assuming that, as in prior years, we do have some, ability to add positions to support the growing community, we would know that this is one of council's interests and thus look to include it in the process.
No, I understand that. I was just technically trying to clarify on, you've got authority that's not necessarily, if it's not adding to what's already there in the budget process, to take positions that are vacant, that aren't being used, because it's a total count. is the only thing that we're responsible for. How they fill, that's your job. That's all I was trying to clarify for Wally.
And that would be accurate, yes.
Did you have something else? Julie?
Just confirming that that would be accurate, correct?
Okay. Any other comments? All right, well, I think you did a real great discussion, and thank you, both the chiefs, for being here today to giving that presentation.
Mayor, may I just, I know we've heard from some, but not from all. I'm just curious, I just want to confirm, is there consensus among council to move forward with accreditation as recommended, which of course would just be CALEA for police, and it would be the accreditation for fire? So I was
absolutely
just
got that
looking.
message from the
Yes.
council, they were speaking.
Yes.
Everybody
Okay.
just, you can't vote on it, but everybody just look at me and, yeah, we have it,
Okay, thank you.
okay? All right, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. We'll start the next meeting, and then if you want a break, let me know, and we'll take a break. Okay?
We can't start the next one until 6.
Pardon me?
We can't start the next one until 6.
Oh, until 6, you're right. So they have a break. All right, no further business to discuss. This meeting is adjourned.